This is something you've all been asking for relentlessly for quite some time now. It took me ages to gather, but I've finally managed to find 3 distinct accounts of terrifying incidents that occurred during school lockdowns. Each one is completely different, yet equally chilling in its own way. So, let's dive right into the first story. It was a completely ordinary day in calculus class, which was already boring enough on its own. The fact that it was Friday, 7th period, made it even more unbearable because everyone knew the week was practically over and spring break was just around the corner. You could feel the restlessness in the air as students fidgeted in their seats, counting down the minutes until freedom. Thankfully, unlike many of my friends who had tests scheduled with their other teachers, we didn't have any exams that day. Our teacher, who was famously laid back and easygoing, decided to lighten the mood by pulling up sportscle.com and turning our class period into a fun trivia session. We were in the middle of a brand logo quiz, completely absorbed in identifying corporate symbols, when everything changed. I remember the exact second it happened with absolute clarity. My friend had just answered a question correctly. The answer was Adidas, I recall distinctly, when suddenly the dean's voice crackled through the loudspeaker. His tone was completely unlike his usual calm, composed demeanor. He sounded genuinely panicked and frantic as he announced to all teachers that this was not a drill and that we needed to initiate an immediate lockdown. The moment those words left his mouth, I felt an icy chill run down my spine, and goosebumps erupted all over my arms. Even our normally relaxed teacher seemed visibly shaken as he sprinted to the door, flipped off the lights, and urgently waved us toward the back corner of the room. We all huddled together in the darkness, sitting in complete silence for what felt like an eternity but was probably only about 2 minutes. Then, something unsettling happened. The familiar buzzing noise that always came from a panel in the back of the room suddenly ceased. We all exchanged worried glances, realizing that the school must have cut all the power. That was when the gravity of the situation really started to sink in. A few more agonizing minutes passed, and then we heard it. A man screaming at the top of his lungs somewhere down the hallway. His voice was raw and unhinged, echoing off the lockers and walls. 2 girls in our class immediately burst into tears, which only amplified everyone else's fear. The screaming grew progressively louder as the maniac came closer to our classroom. We could hear him pounding violently on the lockers, each thud reverberating through the corridor, while he shrieked threats at the top of his lungs. "I'll kill all of you." At that precise moment, I genuinely began to fear for my life. My teacher urgently shushed us, trying to maintain some semblance of calm, but we were all too terrified to even breathe properly. The banging then shifted from the lockers to our classroom door, and that's when one of the crying girls let out a piercing scream of pure terror. The pounding on the door intensified as the man screamed, "Open up!" Now 2 girls were openly sobbing, their cries filling the dark room. It felt like an absolute eternity as that madman continued hammering at our door, but eventually, mercifully, his attention shifted, and he continued his rampage down the hallway, screaming like a completely unhinged individual until his voice faded into the distance. About 10 minutes later, though it felt more like half an hour given the intensity of the situation, the dean's voice returned over the loudspeaker. He proceeded to explain the situation, which was somewhat unexpected since administrators typically kept such information vague. He revealed that some apparently mentally unstable individual had somehow gained entry into the building and had assaulted the woman working at the front desk. She had fled the building screaming, and the staff wasn't certain whether the intruder was armed or not. This incident occurred before the school had installed any security cameras or could afford proper security measures, leaving the campus completely vulnerable to such threats. The staff had conducted a thorough sweep of all the hallways and classrooms but couldn't locate him anywhere. The dean instructed teachers to resume teaching but to keep all doors locked and not allow any students to leave for any reason whatsoever. The most disturbing part of this entire ordeal, however, came later. One of the janitors working the night shift discovered the man sleeping soundly in one of the storage closets near the back end of the school. According to rumors that quickly spread among my peers, sticking out of his pocket was a .44 Magnum. The janitor must have inadvertently done something foolish to wake him, perhaps leaving the closet door open, because by the time a police officer could arrive on the scene, the man had already vanished into thin air. To this day, my entire class has no idea whether this individual was ever apprehended, but I choose to believe that somewhere out there, he's finally receiving the proper help and treatment he so desperately needs. Moving on to the second story, my school operated with 2 separate lunch periods. The first lunch period was designated for all 6th graders and a portion of the 7th graders. The second lunch period accommodated the remaining 7th graders along with all 8th graders. The lockdown incident occurred at the beginning of October, on a particularly gloomy day characterized by overcast skies and persistent rain. During the first lunch period, I distinctly heard 4 loud, booming sounds that echoed across the campus. Personally, I assumed it was just thunder rumbling in the distance, but the entire lunch crowd erupted into panicked screams. I initially thought those kids were just being overly dramatic, but then campus security rushed in and started shouting at everyone to evacuate into the multipurpose room. The kids who had been standing in line to buy lunch were forced to discard their food and come inside immediately. A group of my friends and I hurried into the multi-purpose room along with a massive crowd of other students, all of us curious and confused about what was happening. Our multi-purpose room is quite spacious, with the back wall consisting entirely of see-through glass panels. When my friends and I were rushed inside, we noticed campus security frantically covering those glass windows with heavy curtains, while adults positioned themselves at every possible exit. My friend Eric, who was just as curious as the rest of us, approached one of the adults to ask what was going on. When he returned, he had a grave expression on his face. He explained that right in front of the school, there was a row of houses, and apparently, a mentally disabled man had barricaded himself inside his home. He was threatening to commit suicide and kill any police officers who tried to evict him. Eric further revealed that this same individual had been seen wandering around outside the school, watching the kids in a deeply unsettling manner. To make matters even worse, it turned out the man was also a registered sex offender. We ended up being trapped in that multipurpose room for an entire hour, effectively taking up 2 class periods. Once the situation was finally resolved and deemed safe, we were escorted to our classrooms one by one in an orderly fashion. Later on, I discovered that the man actually lived next door to my friend Brandy. She told me about a terrifying incident from the previous Halloween when she had witnessed the same man at his window, cutting his arm and using his own blood to write a chilling message on the glass: "Don't come here or I'll kill you." At the time, being Halloween, everyone, including Brandy, had assumed it was just some elaborate decoration or prank for the holiday. But after this horrific incident, we all realized the man was genuinely mentally unstable, and we felt an immense sense of relief knowing he never managed to get anywhere near us. Now, let me share the third and final story, which hits particularly close to home for me. I'm currently 22 years old, freshly graduated from college, and I recently landed a job at my old high school working as a computer intern in the school basement. The basement itself is a chaotic mess, cluttered, disorganized, and generally neglected, but tucked away down there is a small, 3-person office that's actually quite comfortable. It features 3 nice, spacious desks, 2 mini fridges, a flat-screen TV mounted on the wall, and, best of all, incredibly satisfying air conditioning, which is a luxury that neither the students nor the teachers get to enjoy anywhere else in the school. Naturally, all the school's servers and various computer equipment are also housed down there. I managed to secure this position because 3 of my former computer teachers absolutely adored me. I could genuinely consider them real friends rather than just authority figures, and they all went out of their way to help me land this job. Everything had been going great until a few weeks ago when something absolutely terrifying occurred. My 2 coworkers who shared the office with me, Dave and Gary, weren't present at the time. They were both upstairs handling paperwork or whatever else they had to do. I was quietly eating my sandwich during my lunch break when I received a phone call from one of the women in the front office. She informed me that the school was on lockdown because someone, possibly armed, had entered the building. There wasn't much I could do in terms of securing myself, especially since, despite how nice this little office was, it didn't even have a proper door. Just a wide opening. The door leading to the entire basement didn't have a functioning lock either for my own safety. I turned off all the lights in the office and shut down my computer screen. I kept my phone on the desk, frantically texting both Gary and Dave, but neither of them responded. I sat there in the pitch-black darkness, playing games on my phone to pass the time, waiting anxiously for the call from the front office to inform me that the lockdown was over. I had absolutely no idea what was happening upstairs. I couldn't hear anything from down there. I also wasn't allowed to make any calls until I received official confirmation that the situation had been resolved. Then, the noisy basement door creaked open, the sound echoing across the entire basement and into my office. I immediately sat up straight in my chair, wondering if I should call out to Gary or Dave, eager to get some information from them. Instead, someone came running down the stairs, their footsteps growing louder as they approached my office. I quickly pushed my chair away and crawled underneath my desk, trying to make myself as small and invisible as possible. Someone entered the office but didn't bother turning on the lights. There was just an eerie, oppressive silence that filled the room. I can't even begin to describe the sheer terror I was experiencing at that moment. I felt like if I made even the slightest noise, I'd be a dead man. Suddenly, my phone dinged loudly as I received a text message. My entire world seemed to shrivel up and die in that one singular moment as I clenched my teeth in absolute terror. Footsteps immediately moved closer to my hiding spot, and I finally made the split-second decision to dive out from under the desk, capitulating completely and begging whoever it was not to kill me. Just then, someone grabbed my arm and pulled me to my feet. It was some guy in a red plaid button-up shirt, jeans, and a reddish-black cap. He told me, "It's okay, I'm just down here hiding with you." I whispered to him, asking what was happening upstairs. He kind of ignored my question and instead asked if there was an exit down here. I pointed vaguely and told him, "Yeah, around that way." Before he could make any move, I asked him who he was. There was a brief moment of silence before he started explaining that he had come to pick up his son when a teacher instructed him to hide. After his explanation, I checked my phone and saw that the text I received was from Dave. It read, "Dude, this is absolutely crazy. Some guy with a gun shot Mr. Buckley. He's wearing a red shirt and hat. Whatever you do, don't come upstairs." I was about to read the text out loud to the man standing in front of me until I realized the horrifying truth. I looked up and felt my stomach drop violently. The man seemed to catch on to my suspicious stare, and panic flooded through me. All I could think to do was run for the stairs leading back upstairs. A gunshot echoed through the basement, and I could hear the bullet ricochet off something metallic in the darkness. Thank God, the bullet missed me, and I managed to make it upstairs. Fortunately, police officers were already waiting at all exits, including the basement entrance, and they caught the man the second he opened the door. Even more good news: our teacher, Mr. Buckley, survived the gunshot wound. It was later determined that the man and Mr. Buckley had some kind of personal beef for whatever reason, but the exact details were never officially revealed. All we know is that Mr. Buckley couldn't possibly have done anything that would have warranted such a violent reaction. And I know, with absolute certainty, that the sound of that gunshot will forever echo in my mind for the rest of my life.